Gay! We're going to say it on this channel because we know that love is love and gay people have always been here. Our primary focus is on gay men this week, so hope you're ready to ask yourself, what does it all mean? I release a new project every week, Thursdays at 3 Pacific. I need you to like, subscribe, and ring my bell so you can see everything we've got to offer. And leave a comment. We welcome the respectful feedback and look forward to interacting with the community. Homosexuality has existed in humanity since there were humans. Nomadic tribes and pre-civilization humans often had homosexual members, who were men or women, that didn't procreate but still maintained social, intimate relationships with other tribesmen like them and helped to raise the tribe's children. The best known case of early homosexuality, though, comes from two high officials in ancient Egypt, Nyankhnum and Hnumhotep. Both men lived and served under Pharaoh Muser in the 5th dynasty, 2494 to 2343 before Common Era. Next, in ancient Greece, human intimacy was generally understood in terms of penetration, pleasure, and dominance, rather than a matter of the sexes of the participants. Perhaps this is one reason why experimenting with homosexuality in college is known as going Greek. There's some definitely problematic aspects of Grecian same-sex relations, most notably in what was called pedastry, but that's nowhere near the focus of topic here. The type of age and power dynamic exercised in pedastry was nothing if not abusive. The types of gay relationships celebrated at Pride are always between consenting adults. Now, equally problematic is how there seemed to be a social stigma in ancient Greece about grown men who would adopt the passive role in relationships with other men because it was seen as feminizing. I wonder how the ancient Greeks would react to your average gay bear these days. These are very large men who are also very masculine but tend to be a passive role. But not all bears are passive, much like today's character, Mirari. Now, we've heard this name only once before in reference to one of our up-and-coming voice actors, Cyrus the Skeptic. While Cyrus himself isn't interested in other men, we trust him to deliver a faithful role. After all, homosexuality is just one aspect of Mirari's character, not his entire persona. But going back to ancient Greece, I can't break away from that era without mentioning Achilles and Patroclus. The first recorded appearance of a deep emotional bond between adult men in ancient Greece culture was in the Iliad, 800 before Common Era. Homer does not depict the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus as sexual. The ancient Athenians emphasized the opposite age difference between the two by portraying Patroclus with a beard in paintings and pottery, while Achilles is clean-shaven. More of that problematic topic. Although Achilles was also a godlike figure in Greek society, this led to a disagreement about which to perceive as Erastes and which Eromenos, which basically meant the term for, top and bottom, as it were, among elites such as Aeschylus and Pausanias. Since Homeric traditions made Patroclus out to be older but Achilles stronger, it has been noted, however, that depictions of characters on pottery do not represent reality and may cater to the beauty standards of ancient Athens. Other ancients, such as Xenophon, held that Achilles and Patroclus were simply close friends. We also know that queer culture is constantly being erased or covered up by historians for a variety of reasons. Many still have religious beliefs that could make this knowledge taboo, for instance. And there's still the ongoing stigma about passive roles in male homosexuality. The Norse had similar beliefs towards homosexuality. Now that's important since this is the area where Mirari comes from. Despite him eventually convening with Martin in Ireland, Mirari left his home for a hermitage and found solace in some ruins near Galway in 1285 Common Era. And now, when we're talking about the Viking Age, there aren't a lot of really solid evidence for male homosexuality. There's a lot of stories in Norse myth, like, for instance, Loki giving birth to children, Thor cross-dressing to marry a giant, etc. But things like these and likely man-to-man relationships during that time were considered ergi and argor. These are two words in Old Norse that were used as an insulting term to denote effeminacy and unmanly behavior. It's no wonder so many people these days have had so many issues breaking away from stigma of misogyny surrounding any kind of queerness. For a long time, it's all because roles that are deemed feminine in society are seen as wrong or bad. And not even just like for men to do these things, as much as, well, any kind of feminine role. Women were oppressed a lot during that time as well. They were held down or treated as second-class citizens that weren't smart enough to do some of the things that men could do. But what is a complete myth, however, is that Vikings would execute homosexual men and throw them into bogs. They were more likely just to be shunned from society. It is known that this was often a practice for those who had broken the law as a form of capital punishment, however, but this could have also been done for thieves, murderers, or those who were actually dangerous to society. Through the medieval period in Europe, homosexuality was generally condemned and thought to be the moral of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Historians debate if there was any prominent homosexuals and bisexuals at this time, but it is argued that figures such as Edward II, Richard the Lionheart, Philip II Augustus, and William Rufus were engaged in same-sex relationships. And it also bears to mention that the story of Sodom and Gomorrah doesn't really have much to do with homosexuality. It has to do with the populace wanting to assault angels that had been sent by God to visit their town. That's why God nuked Sodom and Gomorrah, according to biblical canon, not because of homosexuality. Also during the medieval period, there were legal arrangements called adelphopaiasis, brother-making, in Eastern Mediterranean, or affroirement, embrotherment, in France that allowed two men to share living quarters and pool their resources, sharing one bread, one wine, one purse. Historians such as John Boswell and Alan A. Tulchin have argued that these arrangements amounted to an early form of same-sex marriage. This interpretation of the arrangements remains controversial. This is also particularly interesting, though, given one very prominent English king who ruled from 1576 to 1625 and is widely accepted to have had multiple same-sex partners over the course of his life. I'm talking about none other than King James VI and First. The reason he's known as both Sixth and First is because he was King of Scotland under the Sixth, and King of England and Ireland under the First. But what's most known about this particular patriarch is his sponsorship to translate the Christian Bible into English. This would later be known as the Authorized King James Version, or KJV. In this translation of the Holy Codex, some notable changes included changing the notation of man lying with male, a passage intended to decry pedastry, as the Hebrew word male was used to denote adolescence, into man lying with man, criminalizing the very behavior that James was taking part in on the side. And yes, in fact, he had a habit of giving his lovers their own titles, such as naming Robert Carr, Earl of Somerset, and George Villiers, who he made a knight, an earl, and later Duke of Buckingham. In his letters to the king, Villiers wrote, "I naturally so love your person, and adore all your other parts, which are more than any ever one man had." Oh my goodness, the imagery in that statement made me blush. Plenty of evidence exists to support a relationship between the king and Villiers. It was long airbrushed from public view. And I've mentioned that a couple other times in this video already. We're starting to see a big pattern. It was even something I went into briefly on my project with Matthias and Medieval Bards. There was a whole system of male homosexuality, and largely went ignored or is hidden by historians. This is the basis behind the "they were roommates, best friends, etc." trope, where queer relationships are intentionally obfuscated for the romantic elements in favor of trying to make them look entirely platonic. Which is, as a note, why I've gone into making this series of projects. Not only am I drawing attention to some of the queer representation that we, as LGBTQ authors, want to see in the media that represents us, but to make it as clearly visible as possible to avoid any Dumbledore-type issues. Let's keep in mind, it's only been in recent years that gay men or women have been able to be allowed to recognize their civil unions under the definition of marriage in many countries. In the United States, Obergefell versus Hodges was a Supreme Court case that was decided 5-4 on the legality of same-sex marriages as early as June 26, 2015, which, by the way, was a landmark decision by this nation's Supreme Court. That's less than a decade ago, though, and there's already many efforts to overturn that decision even now. It's a fight that's been going on for literally generations now. Gay men have survived through countless attempts to remove them from society, from a quiet altering of history to actual brutality or even conversion therapy. So far, none of these types of intervention have worked. The best thing that we can do for gay men and LGBTQ people of all kinds is to let them live the life they're most comfortable in. But that's an interesting segue into my next detail. I'd like you to notice Mirari's pipe. The color scheme is directly borrowed from Cirrus's color scheme, and the purple smoke mocks the pink and purple colors used for the model's skin and hair. Out of curiosity's sake, I did some research on what type of smoke is purple like that, and I found only one type that unanimously came back with answers. It also has a shocking tie-in to gay men in general. Do you know what it is? It's ergot fungus, and that largely grows in rye, wheat, and barley and oats. As you can imagine, all of these are very popular in the medieval era and in regions where Mirari has lived. Actually, it's been a danger to their crops for centuries. Why? Well, ingesting rye bread in which ergot has allowed to fester would result in extreme hallucinogenic experiences, poisoning, coma, and even death. Sometimes called St. Anthony's Fire or Devil's Curse, even Julius Caesar lost legions of his troops to ergot poisoning. And between 900 Common Era and 1300 Common Era, somewhere between 20,000 and 50,000 people were killed in ergot epidemics, which eventually toppled the Holy Roman Empire. Sheesh. But wait, there's more. Ergot poisoning is also a proposed explanation to bewitchment. Most historians today believe that witchcraft trials that led to thousands of deaths and burnings at the stake in Europe during the Middle Ages were likely related to outbreaks of ergot poisoning. Huh. Bewitchment. You know, I know this is really off topic, but I wonder if that may have had something else to do with why Edna was persecuted. Perhaps one day I'll get all those answers that I need. Okay, so, what does it all mean? Why is this plant so deadly? Oh well, ergot fungus contains a number of highly poisonous and psychoactive alkaloids, including lysergic acid. A particular chemical synthesized from this very alkaloid in 1938, however, became critical to the push of conversion therapy in gay men. Supposedly dozens of people were able to cure homosexual desires using this acid synthesized into its chemical form that we now call LSD. And this is the reason I decided to keep the purple smoke. It helps in shedding some light onto this practice. It's highly dangerous and should never be used frivolously. However, I suppose if you're a fantasy mage looking for supernatural visions and wisdom like the hermit Mirari, it's bound to provide some kind of boost. It's certainly enough to curb his homosexual desires, as he embraces his love of men in lavish attention, particularly towards those that society would see as ergi. And so happy Pride Month, guys. Give your man a hug today. You've all fought so long to deserve it. Ooh, some wild information in this project. I hope everyone found something interesting to walk away with. Mirari won't be seen in the story for some time now. We're working on getting the actual episodes out faster. Speaking of which, stay tuned for Catch and Kiss, but you'll need to like, subscribe, and ring my bell, so go ahead and do that now. Your support helps us greatly in getting these projects and episodes out to you faster, so please consider visiting the Patreon link included in the description and check out the tiers we have to offer. Starting at just $1 a month, those at the $10 tier can gain access to a new page of the Monomyth comic book every week. The $50 Keeper tier gets access to the raw scripts so you can read the story way ahead of time, should you prefer the sort of novel format to the story. For now, let me give a big thanks to our current patrons: Shadow Fox, Arya Gamari, Charles Tam, Jace Marlowe, Lunder Lumen. Komabogbog has done it again with this piece. I'm glad to have them working with us so actively, and I look forward to doing more in the future. For now, I'd like for my viewers who got this far to click the link down in the description and head over to Komabogbog's business on Fiverr. You can commission them for as little as $5 a piece, and if you've been watching my channel for any other time, you already know how good the quality is.